Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. And I am so thrilled to be able to say this live from north of Beirut, Lebanon. Live from Lebanon. I'm with Hala, EZZEDDINE, and Dianielle Dawra. And we're going to be talking about digiTAL, this amazing company, and they're going to tell you all about it. And I have to praise once again the magic of LinkedIn, because that's how Hala found me not that long ago, and their message, and it was like instant chemistry. The one thing I want to say, and I was saying this just before we went on air as part of my little monologue, why I'm in Lebanon, even though I'm in New Jersey, but I'm in Lebanon. And it's because the title of this series, Conversation with Calvin, We the Species. It's when I came up with this title in August of 2020. It just hit me at once that, in fact, we are one species, more so now than ever before in human history. And there are two glaring, powerful things that convinced me that we are one species. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and there isn't a place, a person, a country, an island, anywhere in the world that's safe from the pandemic. So we are one species. And number two, we have climate change, and there isn't a spot on Earth, right down to Antarctica and every place in between, that is not affected by climate change. And we all must work together if we want a nice home for our children and grandchildren. So we are one species, and what Dianielle and Hala are doing with their efforts with college graduates and work, and it's great stuff. So that's my monologue, and you're both too young to know it. I always try to model my monologue after a late night. Well, you might know, Dianielle, but Johnny Carson was very famous for doing the Tonight Show, and I try to model myself after Johnny Carson. Of course, I always fall short. But anyway, monologue is over, and I'm so thrilled to introduce you, Dianielle, and shortly we'll get to Hala. And I guess the best way to start is you have such an interesting bio and journey. So take it away.
Thank you, Calvin. I really appreciate you hosting us today. We're honored to be here and to share a bit about, our journey as a company with your audience. So my name's Dianielle, as you mentioned. I'm from Colorado, born and raised in Colorado, but at a young age, about 15, I realized that there was so much more to the world than the small town in Colorado I was from. I was an exchange student in Vienna when I realized that. And from the time I came back at 16 from Vienna, I could never get enough of traveling around the world. It was like I came home and I was already planning, where am I going to go next? So I learned a lot of languages when I was in high school and college. I served a bit in the Peace Corps in Jordan, and that was when my kind of love for the Middle East started. I had studied Arabic at university in Colorado as well. I went on to live in Qatar, where I was an English teacher. And then I went back to Colombia to get my master's in international affairs, and I got a master's of public policy from the National University of Singapore. And then I moved to Lebanon, where my husband is from, to get a job with the UN, which was my dream job. My whole kind of college career, I'd worked towards, being, working with the UN internationally. And then when I started working, I realized that actually I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and that I wanted to really build something with my own hands and be in more control of my life. I'm also a mother of 2 young children. And it can be sometimes challenging, for women to really move up professionally, with all the balance of home responsibilities, et cetera, and mother responsibilities. In recent years, social enterprises have become this fad, because for me, I never wanted to get into business, because my push factor for work has always been doing something good in the world we live in. I really believe in going to work and coming home satisfied. And that for me is helping somebody, even if it's in the smallest way, making our world a better place. And so I realized that I could actually couple those two and create a business where I could make a living off of it and, you know, take care of my family, but also do some good for the world. And it just happened to be that I was in Lebanon. The country had just started a revolution demanding much needed change from the very corrupt government here. But unfortunately came with that a huge economic crisis. The pandemic hit, and that crisis has just gotten worse day by day until today. It is just every day you think it can't get worse, it does get worse. And so it was the perfect time for me to come in as an American living here in Lebanon with certain values and skills that not everybody has in this country, and connections to the international community, and to use those skills to found my business and do some good for the youth here. And that's why I founded digiTAL.
Okay. You briefly began to touch on life in Lebanon. If you wanted to elaborate a little more, I know when we spoke a week or so ago, you talked about even the issue of, you know, of course, we're spoiled here in America. You've been in both places, but when you were telling me about like power 1 to 2 hours a day, you know, I don't process that. So just a quick little picture of life in Lebanon.
Yeah, it's very dire. So right now I don't have electricity actually, and maybe you hear a little humming in the background. This is my private generator.
Wow.
So the light is that I was a bit worried. Where am I going to do this? I don't know when the electricity is going to come, and I have to have enough light. So you see my light is quite dim compared to yours, because we're getting electricity from the government, who they control the, you know, the main electricity source 1 to 2 hours a day if we're lucky. So then we have to rely on private generators, which are becoming more costly and costly because of rising gas prices, subsidies the government is removing because they have mismanaged funds, possibly stolen funds. And so they cannot provide subsidies anymore. So we rely on generators, private generators, but the problem is private generators cannot be run 22 hours a day. So this leaves us with big times where we have no electricity and no private generators. And so for those that have a bit more income, they can buy their own kind of small generators or batteries to make sure they still have internet access, lights. But things like, you know, having your refrigerator on 24/7 is a time of the past for us. So that's the electricity crisis.
Wow.
And the gas crisis. We've just now come to a point where we can actually drive to a gas station and fill our tank up. About 6 weeks ago, we would have to wait 5 hours in line to fill our car up with gas, and we'd get to the front and they would say we could fill it up for the equivalent of about $5. So they were rationing fuel because, again, a government mismanagement, fuel was being smuggled into Syria, for example, where they could, you know, sell subsidized gas for much higher rates. Now it's readily available, but extremely expensive. So to give you a bit, we have also a major inflation problem. So to give you a bit of an example, a soldier in the military, which is quite a common job for a lot of young men and more women in Lebanon. I think about 80 to 90,000 Lebanese are in the military forces. Before the economic crisis in Lebanon, their salary was the equivalent to about $1,000, which was okay. I mean, cost of living is a bit lower here in the States. They could handle it with maybe their spouse working. Today, that is the equivalent about $70. So to fill up a car with gas costs about $50, $60, depending on you know, the size of your car, and their monthly salary is $70.
Wow.
They haven't bought food, they haven't sent their children to school, they haven't paid for electricity, private generator. So people are really at the point of food insecurity. We see more children on the street begging, children dropping out of school because parents can't afford school, malnutrition. Just overall, the country is in a very, very difficult situation. Yes, part of it is due to the pandemic, but much of it is due to much deeper problems that are probably going to take years to fix.
So, which leads me to the next logical question. Why did you start digiTAL? And if you can talk a little bit about what digiTAL is.
Absolutely. So I came here before all of these issues actually were happening. Life was, pretty normal. Things were good. I mean, Lebanon's always had problems. We had a civil war for a long time. It was never great, but it was better, and a lot better compared to what we're going through now. But something that always struck me is that I would meet all these young people in Lebanon who spoke English fluently, French fluently, obviously Arabic. They had masters, PhDs, they didn't have work. And I just couldn't understand it. Like, you have so much potential, so much to offer, and you can't find a job. And their dream was always is, and is now very much so, to get out of the country, to go find work abroad. But it's not always easy. They have a very strong family unit. They need to support their family. And at the end of the day, this is their country. They shouldn't have to leave if they don't want to. This is where they may want to stay. So then I thought to myself, like, why don't we just bring the work to them? And this was before remote work was a thing. But I thought, I have all these connections. I'm a native English speaker. I could just bring remote projects, hire Lebanese or refugees, Syrian, Palestinians to do those projects, and I could guarantee the quality and then deliver them to international clients. So that's basically the model that we're built on. Today, we're lucky that we now have project managers like Hala, so that they have the experience, the know-how, and they work with younger freelancers who often come from also remote areas. The area I live in, Lebanon, is more remote. We're 30 minutes from the Syrian border. Hala is, I don't know how many minutes from the Israeli border. So we're on the opposite sides of the country, remote areas where there's not a lot of work. So it's about bringing young people in those areas, not in Beirut, where the situation is bad, but a bit better. In these remote areas, jobs that they don't exist and they need access to, and while also ensuring that our clients internationally, they get quality work at competitive prices. So it's really a win-win for everybody.
Brilliant. Because it is a whole new world with remote. And I don't think the world will ever go back to the old days. You're going to have this whole institution of remote. So you're harnessing that, and you have this great wealth of talent, and you're. I just think it's it's brilliant, which brings me to the business model. Why do you think private companies? Why do you think private companies can play such an important role in socio-economic development? You think that?
I really believe that private solutions could be more sustainable. So often NGOs rely on donations, money coming from donor countries or private individuals. And based on the experience I've had working with NGOs, there's not always a lot of attention to efficiency and effectiveness. So I don't always think money is put exactly where it should be. I don't always believe that, for example, on youth employment projects, youth are actually given the skills that are demanded. But when you have a private company, well, basically you have to be providing services that are demanded, or your company fails and you go out of business. That's the end of the day. You have to be providing quality services or you have no clients and you go out of business. So that's really, for me, is why, private companies can play a really sustainable role. And it's not about also giving handouts. These young people that work with me, they don't want handouts. They want to work like every other young person in the world. They want experience. They have high ambitions for their future. And they want to be able to provide for their families and support their families during these difficult times. And that's what we're able to do. So it's about empowerment, and I think about sustainability. And I don't think these always exist in the NGO business or NGO model, to be honest.
Again, I say brilliant. No, it's interesting. I've since I started this channel, I've done 111 interviews, and I think almost the majority of them have been with Gen Z, young people. And I'm the complete opposite of Gen Z, being a septuagenarian. I always call myself that. It's easier to, it's more elusive to say I'm a septuagenarian than to tell somebody I'm in my mid-70s. It makes my head feel better, you know. So, but and I must have mentioned to you, 2 years ago, I was called in and I was asked if I wanted to teach at Rutgers. And I did teach young people at Rutgers a course called Career Explorations, which maybe you can use me one day. I think we talked about that, you know, to be a guest, you know, speaker, and I'd love to. But anyway, the business plan and what you're doing is great stuff. Next, can you, I was looking online, and of course, all that information will be displayed for people to see right here. And then, of course, on all the promotion I'm going to do. Can you describe the team at Digital? And of course, we have Hala right here.
Absolutely. So we really right now are focusing on 3 services, if you will. One is virtual assistants. So it's ranges from, you know, data entry, lead generation, kind of secretarial work. And Hala is our project manager for that. So she really ensures that our freelancers are on the right track. She mentors them, helps them build their skills, and then does the quality assurance, which is very important for our clients. And she has about 10 or so freelancers working under her. Then we have Nabil, who is our web development project manager. So he supports on all websites, mobile apps, e-commerce sites that we develop for clients. Again, you know, a lot of businesses aren't able to create their own website. We can offer a solution to that. And then we have Maria, who heads our digital marketing. So she supports in SEO, search engine optimization, for companies who want to make sure they're ranking high on Google, in content creation, especially with that SEO keyword aspect to it as well. So these are the 3 that we're focusing on now. In the future, we might add things, you know, like translation or different tracks, but these are the 3 that we're currently supporting our clients on, and we have teams working on.
Perfect. Now, perfect segue to introduce Hala EZZEDDINE. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity. So I'm Hala EZZEDDINE. I'm from Kafra, a small village in southern Lebanon, the total opposite from where Danielle lives. So I'm a biomedical sciences graduate, and I have a master's in e-health and telemedicine management as well. I went through Danielle through my cousin, so I had no idea what remote work would look like. So I started as a freelancer. I had no idea I can be the project manager now where I am. I took each few weeks I had one project, and Danielle was really there every time. She assisted me and guided me through it all. I like the fact that I worked from home, and due to the limited here in southern Lebanon, the opportunities are very limited, not like the city Beirut. So it's really hard to find a good job, especially when it comes to the salaries. And you know, here also southern Lebanon, you need to travel a lot in the car, so nothing is near you. So I chose the remote work. I said I'll give it a try, and now I'm here. So yeah.
Okay. Why, when and why did you join DigiTAL? How'd you find DigiTAL?
Yes, so as I mentioned, through my cousin, she used to work at the UN with Danielle. She told me, like, you just apply. I worked at a medical laboratory here near me, but I wasn't happy, you know, low salaries, long working hours. So, and the pandemic came, and I reached out to Danielle, I sent her my CV, and she told me, we started the small projects, and
Okay. So your experience at digiTAL, you went from a freelancer to a project manager.
yeah.
So what do you, as a project manager, what do you do? I don't know what project manager.
Yeah, exactly. So as a project manager, I assist my colleague freelancers. I assist them through the process from the start of the project till the completion. We make sure that everything's on track as the client's objective is needed. Also, we do some trainings, the soft skills for the freelancers, and we all work together.
That's great. What do you like most about working at digiTAL?
First of all, the diverse team, like we're all from all over Lebanon. The impact Danielle and digiTAL is giving, and the opportunity it's giving us, like it's really rare, and especially in this situation here, it's really hard to find a decent job, especially when you're working from home. You don't have to worry about the gasoline. You don't have to worry about especially the salaries. She's giving us the opportunity to get paid like more than having to be employed here in by Lebanese. Yeah, and what else?
That's good. So my last question for you for now is, does digiTAL, is this part of like a long-term future for you? Does it fit into your long-term goals? By the way, you know, what's interesting, and I have to say this because you're both young, and when I taught at Rutgers, in each class I taught, and it's a great lesson for you, what I taught these young people, each time I'd say the same thing, that you're going to have 17 jobs in 5 careers by the time you finish. And you know, I've had 5 jobs after I turned 65. So it does work. So I mean, that's number one. And the other thing I taught was 70%, and this is important too, that maybe someday I would talk to the team at digiTAL. Is 70% of the people who hire you is because you somehow know them, maybe from social media, and it's such a different world, your world. Anyway, let's go back to Danielle. Who are your, with digiTAL, who are your typical clients now?
Yeah. Well, I'm proud to say that all of our clients come from outside of Lebanon. And for me, this is important because I always look at it that the jobs that are here, they already exist. And I would rather have other people that are here that maybe don't have access to the international market or community to have access to those jobs. And I want to bring new jobs and new opportunities and new money to the country. So 100% of our clients have been abroad. From just about every continent. I mean, a lot based in the US and Canada because, you know, my ties to those areas, but we have clients that come from Asia, South America. I've had clients in Africa, a lot in the Gulf countries, because of course our staff speak Arabic fluently. So countries, you know, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, etc. Some of the clients are small businesses, startups that, you know, often have very tight budgets.
Right.
They need quality work. Historically, they would turn to like India and the Philippines for cheap, you know, freelancers. But we've been able to put Lebanon into that game because we can compete with those prices now because of inflation. And I think that we can also even offer a better product because it's all going through project managers. It's being looked at by native English speakers, etc. And sometimes we have large companies large companies or universities in the US that we do projects like, so it really varies, but all of them are from outside of Lebanon.
Great. It's funny, I was, in the things I was looking at, you got this wonderful praise statement from somebody in Canada from the work you've done. I did my homework, you know. I'm a good old-fashioned journalist. I try to read up and study. So why would you say clients prefer to hire digital rather than like freelancers? There's so many freelancers around.
Yep.
It's because of the services, I guess, you provide.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There are plenty of places you can go hire freelancers, especially after the pandemic. I mean, a lot of people are offering freelancing services online. I think A is the cost value. So of course, you know, it's going to be much cheaper to hire us compared to, like, say, American freelancers. And it's the quality then that we're adding, that we're, as a native English speaker and project managers, are assuring the quality of work. So they get that while they get those cheaper prices that help their small businesses grow. And I think it's also about reputation. So when my company, like, our reputation is on the line, so I have to deliver quality, or it could mean that, you know, the dozens of freelancers that work with me could be out of jobs because I've, you know, messed up the quality, the reputation of the company. When you deal with freelancers, they don't necessarily have that reputation, right? They're just an individual. And if they mess up on a project, they might just move on to the next. So I think that's why often they turn to agencies like digiTAL to provide the services, because they can guarantee that quality. The reviews are there. We've built a reputation of being trustworthy and offering quality services.
Right. Yeah, I'm just, you know, listening and absorbing it all. You're in such a wonderful position with everything you're doing and the talent and your work. And like I said, I do what I can here to spread the word.
Thank you.
Because I really believe in that. And we talked about it before we went on air, the stuff I want to do, because it's just such a, it's so needed. And looking at some of the work you've done, you know, I say, wow, this is great stuff. So you also have some campaigns and initiatives, CSR, which includes My Education, My Future. Can you just say a couple words about that too?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, our core mission is to bring remote jobs to young people in Lebanon. But because we're working in our communities and a lot of people see, you know, the work that we're doing, we get approached by a lot of people and families that need support. The first thing I do is try and understand if there's somebody in the household that has some digital skills, knows English, university degree that we can employ, but that's not always the case, right? And like I explained earlier, the situation is dire in the country, so needs are huge. So we'd like to do what we can to help our communities in, you know, in our own CSR, corporate social responsibility initiatives, separate from our core mission. So we started the first one after the Beirut blasts. Remember, I'm sure many of you viewers remember that huge explosion that happened in Beirut. Yes, it was in Beirut, but many people from all around Lebanon were impacted. It's a small country. It's the size of Connecticut. Most people go to Beirut or have family that goes to Beirut on a daily basis for work. So, I mean, I personally know, you know, a handful of people who were affected, people who had their children or spouses pass away in the bombing, etc. So, and people that lost their work that had been at the port. So that was like the initial, I think, moment that I realized, like, we have to do something extra. So we started collecting donations from, you know, our clients, our network abroad. Again, when it's in US dollar, the purchasing power is much higher. And so we were able to offer food boxes, cash assistance, and medical assistance, buying people medicine they needed. And so that spun into an ongoing initiative where we gathered a list of about 15 to 20 families we knew of personally. We knew their situation, and we would explain that on our website, and people could choose the family that they wanted to donate to. Some of them having single mother households, some with children with disabilities, unemployed parents. Often you'll see like 2 or 3 generations living in a household. So the elderly parents plus the son and his children, and the son often the only working member of the household and definitely underemployed, if not unemployed. So we started working and getting donations in and handing them out to our community. What I noticed about 3 months ago is the heavy toll this crisis is having on our children. First of all, they have missed 2 years of education in Lebanon, not 1 year because we had the revolution before the pandemic and schools were closed because of that. They've had to deal with this huge burden that, at the young age of 5, 6, just children, and the mental, stress of watching their parents struggling, to put food on the table, etc. And the whole reason my business model works is because of the talent and the education level of Lebanese. So what's going to happen when we have a huge generation of children that haven't been in school for 2 years, and they're at risk of not going to school this year because most children go to private schools because the public schools are very poor quality here, and parents can't afford to pay for private schools anymore. So I decided to launch My Education, My Future campaign, because again, if these children do not get the education, then my business model won't work in 15 years or 20 years, because that's what Lebanese thrive off of, is their skills, their knowledge. If you know any Lebanese outside of Lebanon, chances are they're really highly successful individuals because they're hardworking and smart, but they're just stuck in a country where everything's working against them. So anyways, we launched this campaign, My Education, My Future, to bring aid directly to school children, take the burden off the parents. So we've partnered with a number of centers for children with disabilities, because we strongly believe they are, impacted even more. They're highly vulnerable children, and schools, private schools, mainly in North Lebanon. They've identified the most vulnerable children in their schools based on, poverty levels, unemployed parents, disabled members of the household, etc. Often these children haven't paid for school in a number of years, but the school, of course, doesn't want to kick them out. They try their best not to. And so we're working to bring donations and funds to cover the cost of tuition and school supplies for these children. So at least it's just a little bit of a burden that can be taken off the parents' shoulders. And honestly, in US dollar, anywhere from about $300 to $500 would pay for the tuition.
Wow.
For an entire year. But again, think a military member is making $70 a month. So
Wow.
for them, that amount is a large responsibility. But obviously for an American, for example, that's fully employed, it's more doable.
Wow. There's an old saying somewhere, I forget where, and listening to you, it kind of reminds me with your initiatives, it goes something along, he or she who saves a life saves the world. And that's what you guys are doing, that's what you're doing. And that's a great way to kind of wind down this segment. With what you're doing, it has so much meaning. So this has been great, and it's only the beginning. I welcome you to come back. I would talk.
Thank you.
I'm a pretty good communicator. I have a lot of notions and ideas as a retired guy here. But if you've got people at digiTAL, I can kind of talk about things that I'm good at talking about, and networking, and but the stuff you're doing is absolutely wonderful. So A, I invite you back. B, we'll chat briefly after I end this officially. But this has absolutely been wonderful, and I said this earlier, Hala, I'm so grateful for LinkedIn. I write them all the time to tell them how much I love LinkedIn, because it has been transformative in my life when I shouldn't be using it. Somebody in the 70s doesn't need a job anymore. Social Security takes care of me, but it's allowed me to meet people like yourselves, which has changed my life and my outlook. It's funny, I just read an article last night. I read a million health articles, and there was an article I read last night that with the work I do and the thinking and the communicating, somebody in their 70s, it actually helps this thing stay away from Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually chemically, genetically, somehow, and so I'm just so thrilled to have met you both and spent this time with you, and please come back. And it's just, I can't thank you enough. And actually, I love the background, Danielle. I think it's great. It reminds me of a museum. It's great. So anyway, thank you so much, and please come back.
Thank you. Thank you for having us,
you.
Calvin. It's been a pleasure.